Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path of recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
I got a project for our coffee mates.
What's that?
Well, you know, I was sitting here thinking, we sit and chat in the coffee shop. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm at Starbucks, right, and I'm talking to you, I'm honestly, Glenn, I'm paying attention to you, but I can also tell you the conversation of the people on the table over next to me. I can get a pretty good handle on how
They
long
call that
she's
multitasking.
Yes, or multi-listening.
Multi-listening.
So I'm wondering who's leaning into our conversations, right? So I have a challenge to our coffee shop participants. Drop us an email at podcast@sober.coffee and just give us a little snippet about where you're at in your journey. You know, are you sober curious? Do you have a little bit of time? Do you have a lot of bit of time? What value does the
Or
right?
reach out in private message on TikTok, YouTube.
TikTok or YouTube or
Instagram.
No, Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's great, man. It's I mean, we just love connecting with people, and we get some really solid connections, and I'm still trying to figure out who the funny one is.
Brian.
Oh, Brian's the funny
Brian's
one.
the funny
There
one,
we
yeah.
go. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's awesome. But no, man, it's good stuff. We were just chatting about, you know, that you're in my top 10, if not top 5, you know, people in this world, and just amazing, man, how this stuff works. And I'm just thinking, I if it wasn't for sobriety, I probably never would have met you.
Yeah, no way.
Although
there was weird. We were in the same church building.
There was a weird
Impactful
diagram
church building. Yes.
where it was Easter of 2015.
Oh.
God, that's 10 years ago,
yeah.
Mikey.
Yeah.
We were
Very
in
impactful service.
We were very impactful. We were in the exact same service, exact same room. It was a big room, but exact same room together. I was probably 9 months sober. I was dating a girl, Jen, who I ended up marrying, and you were drunk.
Yes, I was. I came in.
I mean,
you know, I can't tell you.
God, you just cannot make this shit up.
I can't tell you. I'm not when I was drinking, I was a crier, right? I'm not a crier.
I know
now.
there's a lot of guys that cry when
Yeah.
they're drinking because it's emotion
It's
fuel.
a depressant too,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So, but like I would cry at the Alka-Seltzer commercial, if it hit me just the right
that's
way.
awesome.
But that didn't happen often. But what did happen often is when I go to a church service that had impact on me, there would be tears of despair because I knew what I was doing. I knew I was under the influence of alcohol. I'm in a great place, but I'm not feeling it. I'm feeling so depressed. I'm feeling so desperate. I'm feeling so disconnected. And so I wouldn't doubt it if, as you were smiling in that church service.
I don't think I was smiling. I was not at that phase yet.
Right.
I was not at the smiling phase. I was at the survival phase.
Okay. Yep.
I was at the let me just get through this phase.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I mean, hey, I'll tell you what, at church, I still, at the end of church when we do communion, they put those, quiet music and
Right.
I mean, still to this day, I reflect back to a vision I have with, my God as I know him today. Back when I was drinking, the vision I had is because I spent a lot of time next to the toilet, so this is not surprising. But I always envisioned myself next to the toilet, and God sitting there saying, "Hey, man, are you ready? To have a relationship with me yet?" I'm like, no. I'm like, God, I'm almost there, sir. I'm almost there. Now I call him dude, but I'm like, sir, I'm almost there. Not quite yet. And so I actually had this vision. I'm like, many times when I was drinking, and he would say, okay, I understand that. And he would take my head by the back of my hair and shove my head down that toilet again and just go right back into that alcoholic hell. And, until I probably had that vision hundreds of times, where he pulled it up. Are you ready yet?
Are you ready yet?
And I'm like, man, I almost have this figured out on my own. I don't think I need you.
Right.
Okay. boom, right back into that toilet, flush in the toilet of shit, and flush my head again.
I spent so much toilet time. I mean, that is the most inhuman, degrading position you can be in on the floor of a...
I laid on the floor of the Ritz-Carlton in St. Thomas, literally, this is not bullshit, for 1 week.
Wow.
I had them deliver big bottles of Belvedere to the room, and I remember paying for it with cash, and it was like $200 a bottle, and every day they brought me one, and I had the most beautiful view, beautiful suite, and I literally laid on that bathroom floor. I had my pillows in there the entire week.
What?
I had to be pulled out of that hotel.
I mean,
it was disgusting.
I've been pulled out of a hotel before too. It is disgusting. But what was the bill? Do you remember the bill? Can you remember what your bar tab was and your?
I paid for the booze
tab?
daily. Every time they would bring a little cart with a bucket of ice and 2 glasses, and I was by myself, but
right.
and the big bottle,
right.
the big
right.
bottle, not just the handle. There was a tall bottle of Belvedere, and I don't know what they thought. I didn't care, but I didn't eat anything the entire week, and I mean, all I did, literally,
was lay on the floor.
Yeah, I have one picture from the first day
of you laying on the floor.
No, I was at the pool, and I took a picture of the palm tree, the beautiful blue sky, and
that was it.
The
then
rest
you went
of the
dark.
week,
Then you went dark.
The rest of the week, I somebody came and pulled me out.
So I go to Vegas when I could, and
they still have your picture up at the airport.
But they
biometrics.
They serve. But here's the deal: they serve alcohol for free. All you got to do is be sitting in front of a machine or a table. I'm buying my own liquor, like in volume, even though it's free on the floor.
Yep.
It just doesn't make sense.
So here was my trick a couple times. When you, I tried to manage how much liquor I had, right? And so you run out, and the liquor stores don't open till 10, right? Maybe you can find a grocery store that'll sell it at 8, right? But when it's 3 in the morning and you're shaking and you need booze and you don't have any booze, I'd go to the casino.
Oh, there you go.
I would drive, drunk to a casino within 30 minutes of my house.
There you go.
And I would sit there, play the $10 blackjack table and drink for free.
Just drink for free. Wow. So topic for today. Great segue. 3 things that sobriety has delivered that were non-existent in our old life. Right? So we just talked about our old life, right? So kind of new birth.
All right, so
let's kind of go rapid fire, right?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't. When you say new birth,
yes,
I have a stigma.
Okay.
And I hate this.
Is it
stigma.
a religious one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Born again.
Okay.
Oh my God, I grew up with that shit. Oh, I was born again. What?
So my new birth is there was old Mike and new Mike, right? And maybe phrased that way because old Mike lived with a certain set of beliefs, characteristics, actions, and addictions. New Mike still has addictions. They're less harmful, right? But he's still got character defects. He's still got this, but he's living in a much better place. He's working. He's making progress. So new birth is new Mike, right? Because old Mike did not work.
So I think, I hear a lot of people in the rooms say that they are rebuilding their life.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
For me, it was more of a new birth.
Okay. So a build, not a rebuild.
I built much from scratch.
Yes. You built. You didn't rebuild. Kind of like a remodel. I'm either going into my house and I'm gutting the walls down, I'm doing a remodel, or I'm leveling the property and I'm building.
Perfect. So here's a way to look at it. I lived at the beach a couple times, right?
Wait, you did what?
I lived at the beach a couple times.
Wait, a house near the beach or on the beach?
No, not on the beach. It was, the one house I had was across the street from
so
the
not
bay.
Destitute laying on the beach.
No, it was no. I had a house at the beach, and they have a lot of environmental standards.
Sure.
I live so close. I used to have crabs in my swimming pool.
Oh,
That's how close I lived.
I used to have
water.
crabs in my shorts.
Dude, that's funny. Man, you are good. So what I know is when they want to tear down their house, right, and rebuild a new house, right, a tear down and rebuild, right. That's sort of how I look at my life. You have to keep X percentage of the old house in order to be able to build a new house.
Okay.
Like you can't take 100% down.
Oh, okay.
Right. So in some of the counties around the beach, one is you had to have X amount of the foundation, right? 10% of the foundation. So you had to save one corner of the old foundation before you could build a new foundation all around it, right? So that's almost what I did, right? So I was working when I was in my 4-month program. I was working with this counselor, and I remember I was sitting on the banks of the Fox River in St. Charles or Geneva, and we worked on the rebuild right there. We worked on what foundational blocks are you going to keep, and here's what she said, because I was in this cycle. I hated myself, shame, remorse, I despised myself and all that, guilt. And so then I would drink to eliminate that because I couldn't handle those feelings. So I drink to eliminate that. And then after I drank, it would fuel those all over again. I was in this cycle. So I identified as that loser, because I did bad things. I am a bad person. I think if you steal enough, I think you're a thief. We deal with Dr. John often says, well, my actions don't define me. Yeah, I think they do. I think if I rob a bank 10 times,
you're a bank robber.
I think I'm a bank robber, right? So I just, right, I can't say I'm not, right? So my actions define me. But what they said was brilliant. She said, Glenn, who you are in 3rd grade is really who you are as a core, right? Paint a picture of who you were in 3rd grade. And I painted this great picture. Hey, I was friendly, I was smart, I was talented. I played the trumpet. I did all kinds of great stuff in 3rd grade, right? I loved who I was in 3rd grade. She's like, that's who you are. Let's take that person forward. You are not the drunk in the gutter. You are the 3rd grader. And I still today, so that I think was my foundation blocks, my 10% of the foundation.
That's a good one to keep.
That I'm like, okay.
I'm going to build on that.
I'm going to build on that. Let's tear everything else down. Mm-hmm. Now, what that looked like is I remember having conversation because at the same time, simultaneously, I said, I got to get back to that true north. Mm-hmm. True north, a relationship with God. I got to figure that out. I got to unlearn all the religious bullshit. And I got to learn how to have a great relationship with God, a loving relationship, not the damnation, the woman at the well where he loved on her, the prodigal son, Jesus, all that stuff, right? Not the damnation, fire, man-made rules, purple robe shit that we grew up with, the 12-minute prayers, all that bullshit. So that's where I started at 0. I took the core parts of Glenn that were real, that were attractive, that were palatable, that I could stand, right? And I obliterated everything else.
Nice.
And I said, God, I have a blank dry erase board. I will do whatever you want me to do. I only had 2 conditions. I'm like, I want to make sure it's your will and not mine, right? So make it clear, because I'm pretty stupid. Make it clear for me. And then I said, secondly, give me the economics, right, so I can pay for it, right? Don't send me to do X and I don't have the resources. So, make sure it's clear to me what your will is, and then please provide the resources, right, to be able to support that. And that started my new birth. I don't use the term born again. I get shivers.
Right.
But that started my new birth, and I really started from 0. I had 0 people in my life. I had no job. I had a lot of skills, a lot of competencies, a lot of talent, but no job, right? And I had to learn the right way to have a job. I had to learn the right way to be a great contributor as an employee. I had to learn all that stuff. So I really, the way I look at it, and in some ways, I look at folks like you that still had a marriage, still had a family, still had relationships, and and that's a challenge at times to navigate, new.
Because you've got mud in the water.
Right. And now that you're a new birth doesn't mean everybody around you is going to have a new birth.
They don't forget my deeds of the
Or
past.
they may not want to change to you.
Sure, right.
They're like, hey, who's his new Mikey?
Let me ask you this, and hopefully this makes sense. I love your 2 building blocks, right? So your third grade self, your true north, was the ultimate question of every human is why, right? What's the purpose of life, right? Mm-hmm. Did the quest to find your purpose become a block for you, a foundational block, or was that the first floor or the second floor built on the foundation?
Yeah, so God, that's a great question. So let me repeat it to make sure I have it. You're asking if my purpose was a key foundational block.
Yes. Or was it
in my new birth?
That's correct. Right.
Okay. So my answer to that, my answer to that is yes, but let me go back when I just had a deep conversation with Jen. I mean, God, we've known each other over 10 years and we still had this. She goes, Glenn, I watch you and I watch your drive and I watch, it's almost like, she goes, it's amazing the stuff that you deliver, but I can just tell that you never think you're good enough. And you need input and accolades and so I opened up. I'm like, well, I've had the privilege of having 20 PhDs. Dr. Scheffner, head of Rush, sat with him. Head of psychiatry at Rush Medical. I've had some of the best talents I've been able to sit in a room with, and multiple. And I know this is going to touch with you. And I said to her, what is pointed out to me by the professionals are a couple key things from my childhood. One is in first grade, I won this reading contest. I read 26 books. Second place read 8, right? And I did some other key things in first grade that were really monumental and stood out from the other students, right? In third grade, I was asked to play in the high school jazz band. I was so good, right? And so I said, when I'm telling these stories, it really clicks for the professionals. Mm-hmm. Something was wrong, right? Nobody in first grade is driven. I was in charge of the incubator hatching our chickens, and I was in charge of it, right? And I stayed after school every day to make, the stuff that I did in first grade, second grade, third grade, sixth grade. Then I started working, all through high school. And I put myself through college. I mean, the stuff is unusual, right? And what they point to was that I was adopted. Mm-hmm. And I was told earliest I could understand that I was adopted. And I bullshitted everybody my entire life. I'm like, my adoption's great. I love being adopted. Oh, Bob and Ethel, God, so glad that they adopted me and they loved me and they gave me a home. But they said, you never told the truth. The truth was you were really pissed off and confused and hurt that somebody didn't want you. Sure. You interpreted that adoption as somebody didn't want you and you weren't good enough. Look, I'm getting chills. You weren't good enough. Right. And so they're like, look, that will impact. So everything that you have pointed through in your life is trying to prove to yourself and to people that you're good enough. And they said the key reason that we can say that is the minute you turned 21 and you were allowed to get your records, you went to you wanted to know why. Mm-hmm. So when you say, hey, what's your why? You want to know why. Mm-hmm. Right. So, and I know you're adopted too.
Yes.
So, I mean, that I think makes sense to me of why I'm in first grade, and I don't want to just read 9 books. I want to crush second place.
That's an absolute overachieve.
I mean, I want to crush. I want to show people, you know what? Fuck you. I am good enough, and I will show you in everything I touch in life that I am better and I am more dedicated, and I will just grind it out and prove that I can do this. Mm-hmm. So going back to your next foundational block of being purpose, when I was in my 4-month program, right after that third grade situation, I did a program on my own called Purpose Driven Life.
Yes.
So somebody pointed me to that, and it's a workbook, it's a book, it's it's 40 days, and so I did that in my 4-month program, and what I learned from that. Two major key purposes came out of that I deployed, and I still live by with every tenement in my soul today. One is that true north, right? Mm-hmm. You got to have a relationship with God. I knew I had to figure that out. Now, that took time. Mm-hmm. I'm still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. You know, we did a whole podcast, God as we understand him. Still trying to figure that out. But I've made a lot of progress, right? I feel really good with where I'm at today as I continue to learn and grow. Second thing is serving. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's funny because if you read the Bible, they have two purposes in life. Love God, love your neighbor.
Right.
Right? And I think if you love your neighbor, you show your neighbor you love them by serving them. Mm-hmm. And so I came out of that book with those two key purposes, and they became my foundational blocks. Doesn't mean the concrete was dry day one. Mm-hmm. I mean, I learned I'm on the slow train. Right, but they were my two key, back in, October of 2014, and they are my foundational blocks today. And here's a third thing that I think is really good when you talk about rebuild, or you talk about new birth, building from that old, that little 10 blocks mm-hmm. that were remaining. Is I think it's very important to be purposeful about, how you build. Or rebuild. I think you got to have, like, for example, I was very slow, very purposeful in rebuilding or building a new life, right? Whatever term that you want to use. And it takes time. It takes time to learn new tools. It takes time for your brain to adjust, right? It reminds me, I was working with a sponsee. He's no longer a sponsee because he wanted to work his program, and that just led to another detox. But he, I remember sitting with him 3 weeks out of it, disasters, chained to the hospital bed, detox, right? Disasters. Guy died in his, just disasters, relapse, right? But he thought he knew it all. We're 3 weeks out of that. And he says, Glenn, I've got this. He said, look, I'm going to open up a sober living house. He goes, I'm dating this girl in Florida, right? He's in Illinois. We're going to blend our families together. He goes, look, I'm going to open up this T-shirt company. I mean, all I'm hearing is this shit-ass, grandiose, alcoholic, spew of, grandiose dreams, right? Had no experience in any of these things. He had, and his kids wouldn't even talk to him. And he was talking about building. I mean, it was just insanity, right? And so, I said to him, he goes, well, I'm going to move out of this sober living. I'm going to start my own sober living. I'm like, dude, you haven't even started to pour the own concrete yet right. for your own foundation, let alone, I'm like, that's a mistake. Fuck you. You don't know anything. You're not cheering me on. You're not in my corner. I think you should help me do all this stuff. I'm like, it's the wrong moves.
Right.
He goes, you just don't have faith in me. I can do all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, good luck. Guess what? 3 weeks later, he's in another hospital. A guy died in his quote unquote sober living house, So, I fortunately learned from watching others, just like in business, I learned 20% what to do through the training programs. I learned 80% to do of what not to do, right, from watching others.
Yep.
And so same with AA. I see a lot of what not to do. People think it's the right thing. It doesn't work. I'm like, how's it working for you?
I've seen people fail time and time again.
And unfortunately, we go to funerals
right.
of people that fail.
Right. And I could probably
who had it.
Right.
I figured it out. And then we're going to their funeral.
I think I shared this a couple of weeks ago with you, Glenn, but I heard a story about a guy who had 10 years of sobriety, and then he said to him and his buddies, his sponsees, his sponsor, we got this, man. We are bulletproof. That was the word he used. We are bulletproof. And sure enough, he went back out there. My point is...
Is that the same guy I'm thinking of?
No.
All right. Because I sat there in the first step meeting with him, and I was like, because I'm coming up on 10 years, and that just freaked me out.
Yeah.
Just
right.
a reminder, man. It
woke me up because I'm only guaranteed today if I work the program today. But my point is that the foundation that I've set, honesty has so much to do with it. I was never honest with myself. And
So that's one of your foundational blocks.
that's one of my
Love it.
foundational blocks. Because
One of mine. I love it.
and that came to be early in rehab. That made sense to me. The other thing was moving the mud away, right? The blur of alcohol and distorting my thinking, my actions, etc., moved me closer to my maker. That was number 2 thing that really changed for me. But something jumped out at me when you were talking about the guy who wanted to build the empire, and knowing you. The funniest thing is, in sobriety, when I stopped fighting for finances worked out. When I stopped fighting for it, everything came into play, right? I mean, when it was my life goal to accumulate cash, yes, I had days of success, seasons of success, but it's nothing like it is now. And I guess I'm not trying to tell the next guy that your financial world is going to be solved. I'm just telling my own story. When I stopped worrying about it, when I stopped trying to drive it, it worked out, or at least I stopped worrying about it.
Well, so that's getting back to your 3 things, and we can rapid fire them off, but that's the piece, and going back to the financial, I mean, if you believe in the 12-step program, right, and you believe in the promises of the 12-step program, it doesn't say, and the words matter. I love the people, and there's some smart people in the room that try to change the words. I'm like, you're a fool. Like, that's your ego. That's your inability to surrender to something else, and you have to drive the bus. But what it says in the promises, it doesn't say economic security will leave you. It doesn't say your money problems will be solved. What it says is fear of economic insecurity will leave you.
Right. Yep.
So that's where I think the peace, right? If you don't have the fear, then you can start to have peace growing in, sliding in. So what were your 3 things again?
Well, so my 3 things were...
What was the question again?
Yeah, the question was the 3 things that sobriety has delivered that were non-existent in my own life. And mine were finances. When I stopped fighting, finances worked out. Honesty through and through eliminates the stress that deceit delivers. And then moving the mud helped me move closer to my maker. Those were my 3 things.
Can you give again? I'm sorry, I was writing my 3 things.
Sure. When I stopped fighting, finances worked out.
Yep.
Honesty through and through eliminates stress. And then moving the mud helped me move closer to my maker. I
love it.
And your 3?
So one, I think one of the most valuable things in my life today is peace.
Okay.
I have snippets of time.
Yes.
It's weekly now. Back then, I remember I was like 2 years in, I had 5 minutes, and then 6 months later, I had another couple minutes. But I think peace is a gift.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just when I drank a 5th of vodka, I found peace because everything was just blitzed.
Right. Sure.
Right. I can find that today without the vodka.
I love that.
Second thing is relationships.
Yes, okay.
I think relationships. In fact, we're going on family vacation coming up here.
Great movie, by the way.
All of us are going, right? So I have a chance, and we're going to a beautiful place. And so I sent invites out to each one of my kids. There's 6. I have 4 kids and then 2, a spouse and a boyfriend. They're all going. There's 6. And there's 6 days, 6 mornings. So I sent them a written invitation for sunrise coffee.
Nice.
I want to have a one-on-one, purposeful, intentional coffee,
awesome.
Check in, let them know I love them, let them know, man, I'm here for you, let them know I'm cheering for them, right? And so my relationships, I have amazing relationships in this world.
Love that.
And thirdly, I think I have, a very purposeful or valued purpose in life.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, when you know where you're going and you know why you're going there, all the shit works out. It just really does.
How did you get there?
Well, one is I went back to the foundational blocks of purpose-driven life.
Yes.
The 40-day program.
Right.
That was one. And then second, I surrendered and I looked and took outside information, right? Outside input on where I'm at and where I'm going. And man, I'm telling you what, I love it. And so for me, I didn't have the luxury of rebuilding.
Right.
I had a devastation, right? But I used the 10 blocks, and I know you more, some of yours was new birth and some of it was a rebuild,
Yeah, right.
So
I love it. Hey, we got people butting on our tables.
oh man, someone wants to
I
tell
know.
you,
We'll be back
we're
next
talking
week.
too long. All right, brother, love you,
I
man.
love you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.